Level 1, entry level. They shave your head on the first day. Not as punishment, not yet, just as policy. You sit in a chair and a man with clippers removes whatever you had going on up there in about 45 seconds. And you walk out looking exactly like the 70 other people who just had the same thing done. And that is entirely the point. You are no longer a person with a hairstyle. You are a recruit. The Army has been making this distinction since before your parents were born, and it will be making it long after you are gone. And your individual feelings about it are not a factor. Your name is gone too, not legally. Practically, you are now your last name, shouted at volume, from varying distances, at hours of the morning that should not legally exist. You will hear it so many times in the next weeks that it stops sounding like a name and starts sounding like a sound, a percussive bark that means move, or wrong, or again, or all three simultaneously. You came here voluntarily. You signed the paper, you raised your right hand. At some point in the first 48 hours, you will revisit that decision in some depth.
Level 2. Real work begins. Basic training is not what you imagined. You imagined something cinematic, obstacles, speeches, a montage of you becoming harder and faster and more capable while a good song plays underneath. What actually happens is you stand in lines. You stand in lines for food, for equipment. You stand in lines for briefings, for things that have not been explained yet and whose purpose will not be explained after. You stand at attention in a parking lot for 40 minutes while something administrative gets resolved somewhere inside a building you cannot enter. Your feet hurt, your back hurts, you are not allowed to shift your weight. The drill sergeant materializes from somewhere on your left and stands approximately 6 inches from your face and says something, loudly, specifically about your posture, your expression, your general presence in his army. And you say, "Yes, sir, drill sergeant," which is the only correct answer to everything he says. And he says something else. And you say, "Yes, sir, drill sergeant," and he moves on to the next person. And you breathe again, quietly, through your nose. This happens many times. You get better at the breathing. You learn weapons. The M4 carbine becomes yours in a specific and temporary way. You are responsible for it. You carry it everywhere. You sleep with it close enough to touch. You field strip it and reassemble it until your hands know the order without asking your brain for permission. You learn to shoot from the prone, from the kneeling, from behind cover, at distances that initially seem impossible and become routine somewhere around the 3rd week. You qualify, not spectacularly, not embarrassingly, somewhere in the adequate to good range, which is where most people land, and which is fine.
The Army does not need everyone to be a sniper. It needs everyone to be reliably capable, which is a different and more useful thing. You throw your first grenade. This is more stressful than the rifle. The rifle at least goes in one direction. A grenade goes wherever physics takes it once it leaves your hand, and the physics are governed by your throw, which is governed by your nerves, which are currently not great. The instructor stands close. You pull the pin, you throw. It lands where it should land. Nothing bad happens. This is the entire goal, and you have met it, and somehow this is one of the better moments of the month. You learn land navigation. You walk into woods with a compass and a map and coordinates, and you find your point, then the next one, then the next one. The woods at night are very dark. The compass is very small. You find all your points. You come back. You say nothing about it to anyone, because there is no one to say anything to who wasn't also doing the same thing in different woods. You graduate basic training. Your family is there. Your mother is there, and she is crying before the ceremony starts, and crying during it. And you are standing in formation, at attention, in a uniform, with creases that took you 40 minutes this morning, and you are looking straight ahead, the way you were taught. And in your peripheral vision, you can see her, and you do not move your face. You have not been moving your face in public for 10 weeks. You are very good at it now.
After the ceremony, she hugs you and she says, "You look different," and she means it as something good, and it is something good. You are different. Not finished, not even close to finished, but different. Something structural has changed. Something in the way you stand, the way you move through a room, the way you look at a situation and start sorting it automatically into components. You have about a week before infantry school. You go home. You sleep in your own bed. It is extremely comfortable, and you spend the first night unable to sleep in it because it is too comfortable, and your body has forgotten how to process comfort as a neutral experience, rather than a warning sign. Level 3, Infantry School. Now comes Infantry School. OSA if you did it all at once.
AIT if you did it after. Either way, this is where you become a specific kind of soldier. You learn the business of infantry, not just how to shoot, but how to move, how to communicate, how to hold a sector, how to breach, how to react to contact. You learn battle drills until they are automatic. React to contact, break contact, react to ambush. These are choreography, specific and tested, built on the bodies of people who did it wrong in real wars and died demonstrating what not to do. The Army took notes and turned the notes into doctrine, and now you are doing the doctrine in the Georgia heat until you stop thinking about it and start doing it.
You learn to move as a unit. This is harder than it sounds. You have been a person your whole life, individual, self-directing. Now you are part of a formation. Your movement affects 4 other people's movement. Your mistake is their problem. Their mistake is yours. You start to understand instinctively why discipline matters, not as an abstract virtue, not because someone told you it mattered, but because you can see in real time what happens to the flow of a movement when one person goes left when they should go right. The whole thing breaks. Then you do it again. Your first unit. Fort somewhere. You show up, you in process. You sit in offices and you sign papers and people stamp things, and you are given a key and a room and a wall locker and a barracks that smells like industrial cleaner and someone else's ambitions. You find your platoon. You find your squad. You are the new guy. Being the new guy is its own full-time job. It is not hazing, not officially, not in the way movies present it. It is just the ambient weight of being unproven in a room full of people who have already proven themselves to each other. Nobody is unkind. Nobody is particularly welcoming. You exist in a holding pattern, present but provisional, until you demonstrate something worth demonstrating. Your squad leader is a staff sergeant who has been to deployment and has a way of looking at situations that is very still and very fast at the same time. He doesn't explain much. He tells you to do things, and you do them, and he watches how you do them, and he files something away somewhere behind his eyes. He has not said whether you are adequate or not. He will let your performance make that statement for him over time. You pay attention. You listen more than you talk.
Level 4, the specialist. You become a specialist. E4, the workhorse rank. The rank that does the most and gets thanked the least and understands why. You are now the mechanism. You carry the weight. You run the patrols. You pull the guard shifts. You do the maintenance, the inventories. You direct the physical training at 6 a.m. every morning that your knees are beginning to privately resent. You are good at this. Not excellent yet. Good. You understand how things work. You know your sector. You know your weapon systems. You can read a situation, and you know what your role in it is supposed to be, and you do that role without needing someone to walk you through it every time. This is what the Army wanted when it made you. This, right here, an E4 specialist who executes without hand-holding. Congratulations, you are what the machine needed. The machine hums along. Level 5, the corporals. Somewhere around your second year, a corporal slot opens up. Small team leadership. You take it. You are now responsible for 2 other people who are doing what you were doing, being the mechanism, being the workhorse, and your job now is to make sure the mechanism works. This is a different kind of hard, not the physical hard you trained for, the human hard, the making decisions about people hard. One of your guys is late to formation once, then twice, and you have a conversation with him that is direct and firm and uncomfortable, and he shapes up. And you learn something from that conversation about what authority actually feels like when you use it carefully and what it feels like when you waste it. You learn to care about your guys while keeping the care at the right distance. Too close and you can't correct them, too far and they won't follow you anywhere that actually matters. Level 6, the sergeant. You make sergeant. E5, squad leader. 9 soldiers. 9 people who will go where you point and do what you say, and whose families exist somewhere back home in a version of life that has nothing to do with what you are about to put their sons and daughters through on training exercises, and eventually in places that are not training exercises. The weight is different now. The physical weight hasn't changed. You still carry the kit, still run the miles, still qualify, still low crawl through whatever is on the ground at the time. But there is a second weight now that sits on top of all of it. The weight of those 9 people, their equipment readiness, their training level,
their morale, which is a real and measurable thing, not a soft thing, because low morale is how people get hurt during the moments that require everything to work perfectly. You do pre-deployment training. The exercises get serious, the scenarios get complex. You are doing things at the platoon and company level that have real tactical logic behind them, working through terrain, establishing positions, coordinating fires, running logistics. All of it building toward a thing that is coming and whose date is on a calendar somewhere in a room you haven't been in.
Level 7, the deployment. Then the date arrives. You deploy. The flight is long, military charter, seats that recline approximately 2 inches. You sleep in pieces, an hour here, 40 minutes there, your body giving up on the idea of real rest and negotiating down to whatever it can get. You land somewhere and the air when the doors open is different. Temperature, smell, texture. It tells you immediately that you are somewhere else now. Your body knows before your brain confirms it. You are somewhere else now. You establish your area. You run your first patrol. The first patrol is cautious and slow and enormous in your awareness, and when you get back, nothing has happened. Subsequent patrols reduce in size in your awareness as the routine asserts itself, but they never reduce completely. You never do a patrol that doesn't matter. That's the deal you've made with this place. Every movement is real. You treat it accordingly. Something happens. This is where the narrative stops being general, because what happens is specific to a day and a place, and a set of decisions and a contact that comes from a direction and at a time that is never the direction or the time you are watching most carefully. That is the nature of it. What you can say later to people who ask is that training worked, that the drills you did until they were automatic when they needed to be, that you gave orders and your guys executed, and then it was over, and you counted your people, and they were all there, and you breathed in a way that used the full capacity of your lungs for the first time in several minutes. What you don't say is what that count meant, what it cost you to do the count, what it would have meant if the count had come back wrong.
Level 8, the Staff Sergeant. Then you come home. Staff Sergeant now, E6, multiple deployments behind you, a second one after the first, a third after that, each one different in terrain and tempo and threat, and each one the same in the basic shape of the experience. Long boredom interrupted by sharp reality, the body adapting, the brain filing things away in rooms it doesn't always let you visit during daylight hours. Your platoon leader on the last deployment was younger than you, 23, West Point, smart kid, good instincts, willing to listen. He listened to you. You told him things about the ground, about how the locals move differently on days when something was about to happen, about what a quiet that is too quiet sounds like compared to a quiet that is just quiet. He took notes. Not literally, but in his eyes. You had been doing this for 7 years. He had been doing it for 1. The gap was that gap. You held it the right way, not with condescension, with responsibility. That's what the stripes mean at E6. Not that you survived, that you know things that keep other people alive, and you are now formally obligated to spend those things wisely. Level 9, Sergeant First Class. You are Sergeant First Class now. E7, the rank that shows up in the footnotes of every decision the platoon makes and in the front page of every outcome. You don't run the missions anymore. You shape them. You sit in the planning meetings and you ask the questions that only experience lets you ask. What's the exfil if the primary route is compromised? What's the contingency for the contingency? What does this terrain look like at night, in the rain, from the position of someone who doesn't want us here? The young soldiers look at you a specific way. You have seen this look before, because you had it once, sitting in a formation, staring at someone with a lot of time on their collar, wondering what the inside of that much experience felt like. You didn't know then. You know now, which is that it feels less like wisdom and more like weight, a very specific and useful weight that you have learned to carry without letting it slow you down.
Level 10, the veteran. Somewhere in all of this, your mother asks you what it's like. She asks over the phone, on a Sunday, in the same tone she uses to ask if you're eating enough, as if the answer might be something she can do something about. You say, "It's fine, Mom. It's good." You say, "The guys are good. The work is good." These things are true, and they are also the version of true that fits inside a Sunday phone call.
What you don't say is that you have been doing this for 12 years, and you are not entirely sure who you were before it started. That the person who sat in that chair and had his head shaved in 45 seconds feels like someone you've read about, rather than someone you were. That you look at civilian spaces with a professional instinctiveness that you cannot turn off. Exit routes, sight lines, cover, who in the room is watching the door. That you sleep fine, mostly, except when you don't. And when you don't, you are very awake and very thorough about it for several hours.
What you don't say is that you would do it again. All of it. Not because it didn't cost anything, because you have looked at what it cost, and you know what it bought. You know exactly what it bought, and you know that someone had to pay for it, and you are glad that the someone was you, a person trained for it, rather than the alternative. She says you sound tired. You say, "I'm good, Mom." She says she's proud of you. You say, "I know." You are sitting in your office on a base somewhere, and outside your window, a formation of new privates is being introduced to a drill sergeant. And the drill sergeant is explaining something, and the privates are standing at attention, and their faces have the particular expression of people who are in the process of realizing that the next several weeks are going to be significantly different from what they imagined. You recognize that expression. You were that expression. You watch for a minute. Then you go back to work. There are things to plan. There are always things to plan. The guys don't stop needing what the guys need just because you had a moment of something in front of a window. You go back to work. Anyone can become a soldier. War is what turns them into veterans.